page 73. The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living, by Jeff Volek and Stephen Phinney. An expert guide to making the life-saving benefits of carbohydrate restriction sustainable and enjoyable. Section 2. Perspective. Chapter 3. The Modern History of Carbohydrate Restriction. 3.3 The Eisenhower Opportunity. In 1955, President Dwight Eisenhower suffered a heart attack, after which his next 4 years in office were spent under an intense media spotlight. Despite having a completely normal serum cholesterol level and normal body weight at the time of his myocardial infarction, he was convinced by his medical advisors that he had to reduce his intake of fat and cholesterol. Soldiers, even generals like Eisenhower, are used to taking orders, so he did as he was told. In response, to everyone's dismay, both his weight and blood cholesterol level went up rather than down. So he redoubled his dietary restrictions and obsessed over his blood test results. It was a classic case of a doing better but feeling worse. But that didn't stop the public health experts of the time, like Professor Ancel Keys of the University of Minnesota, from taking this opportunity to promote a low-fat, low-cholesterol diet for the whole nation. The rationale was that the United States was suffering from an epidemic of heart disease, which was anything but a proven fact, and something had to be done to contain it. And since animal fats contained cholesterol, and arterial plaques contained cholesterol, connecting these dots was an easy story to sell. Meanwhile, the research community set about trying to pour solid concrete under this dietary house of cards. In the 1970s, 2 massive studies were started on men with high blood cholesterol levels. The first, called the Multiple Risk Factor Intervention Trial, MRFIT, used a very low-fat diet, exercise, blood pressure control and smoking cessation to try and reduce heart attack risk. 15. Note 15. Coronary heart disease death, non-fatal acute myocardial infarction and other clinical outcomes in the Multiple Risk Factor Intervention Trial. Multiple Risk Factor Intervention Trial Research Group. myocardial, 1986. 58-1, p. 113. The second, the Lipid Research Clinics, LRC, study, tested the combination of a low-fat diet plus the cholesterol-lowering drug cholestyramine 16. Note 16. The Lipid Research Clinics Coronary Primary Prevention Trial Results. I. Reduction in incidence of coronary heart disease. JAMA, 1984. 251-3, p. 351-64. Close to a decade later, the results of these studies were tallied. For the MRFIT subjects who did everything they were told, there was a slight increase in the death rate compared to those in the placebo group who did nothing at all. In the LRC study, the cholesterol-lowering drug slightly reduced the number of heart attacks compared to the placebo group, but overall mortality in the two groups was not significantly different. Specifically, out of 1,800 men in each group, 68 died in the treatment group and 71 in the placebo group. Ignoring the fact that the MRFIT study got the opposite result from what they had predicted, and that the effect of the LRC study on overall mortality was insignificant, the advocates of the dietary fat, cholesterol hypothesis set to work selling the United States government and people on the idea that eating less fat and cholesterol was good for their health. And in the process, cautionary voices such as Dr. Philip Handler, quoted above, were steamrolled by a vocal group of anti-fat advocates. As for President Eisenhower, in the 13 years after his first heart attack, he followed his doctor's orders with military precision. Despite sticking closely to a very low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet, He suffered from persistent digestive problems and 6 more heart attacks, the last of which killed him in 1969. TB writes, "Common sense about body fat and cholesterol serves to assume that consuming fat is lethal to the body. Opinion is useless. Deep, analytical studies must be made to be able to use statistics and draw conclusions." In the 2 cases referred to on the control of the intake of fats or products that are supposedly the origin of cholesterol, no one supposed that sugar or glucose or carbohydrates have a pernicious influence on the organism. Page 75.